Welcome back to the podcast, guys. Today we are joined by James Smith, who is the managing director of Lean Dimensions International. So, welcome to the podcast, James. Maybe you can start by just telling us a bit about yourself and what you guys do.
Sure. Thanks, Jordan. So I'm essentially a lean manufacturing consultant. I head up the UK side of Lean Dimensions International. So we work with predominantly manufacturing businesses, but also some other businesses on process improvement, workforce capability development, leadership alignment. And we also go into the training space with on-site workshops and e-learning solutions as well.
Okay, perfect. And so you mentioned manufacturing. Like, are those the people that you serve the best?
Yeah, I think that's where we get the most traction is where there's a shop floor, a real live environment, as that's where often a lot of problems show up. So we can connect people to those problems directly and start to upskill them to solve them.
Okay, cool. And what would you say is the main solution that you guys provide?
It's kind of that operational excellence framework around which we build everything around. So that starts off very pragmatic, very basic in terms of problem solving skills, process improvements, those kind of things.
Hmm.
But it builds into a leadership structure in how you actually run your manufacturing operations. And it moves away from being something extra to do to actually being the way you run the business.
I see. Okay, and you mentioned education a little bit as well. Can you tell us, like, is there an education side to what you guys are doing?
Yeah,
Can you share that?
yeah. So actually, it was during the pandemic several years ago. We had a lot of time on our hands, obviously, because we couldn't travel. So we put together an e-learning platform, which is a practitioner of operational excellence, and it's aimed at
Hmm.
shop floor level supervisor, maybe even manager level, to give them a real practical and theory-based e-learning program in operational excellence. And last summer, we teamed up with City and Guilds, who are a big accreditation body in the UK, and they've accredited that program as well. And it's really designed for fast-moving environments where it's not always easy to release people for training for workshops here 2-3 days, so they can do it in a bite-sized e-learning approach. And then it's tied to a practical project so that we can see that they can actually deliver what they're learning.
Okay, I love that. So your tagline is brilliant, right? Helping manufacturing sites stop firefighting. Like, what does firefighting actually look like in a UK manufacturing site today? Like, paint us a picture.
Sure. So firefighting is a very common term in manufacturing. It's probably the one thing I say that most operations leaders go, "Oh, yeah, we do that." And it's where you're too busy masking the problems to actually get to the root cause and solve them. So it could be rework of parts, for example. So if your process isn't set up perfectly, your parts might come out, they're not quite right. So you rework them, right? They're now good quality enough to send to the customer. And if you focus all your effort on that, that becomes what you do. So you're always just going to rework those, or always shortcutting a process, or you're always cable tying a machine back together, all these kind of things.
Hmm.
Reducing firefighting is to say, right, okay, that's fine to get you through a shift, but those fixes don't last. And I've seen fixes where people have put in temporary fixes, sticking bits of product over sensors to stop them stopping the machine, and that goes on for decades. Yeah, so these are the
Yeah.
kind of things that happen, and then it just becomes the process, becomes the way you work. So getting people to understand that shouldn't be the way you work. That's fine to get you through a night shift, but that is not a repeatable long-term fix. So it's almost like stepping back, seeing the problem with fresh eyes and thinking, is that how that process should actually be run? If you reduce that, you reduce all those little niggling issues, and then you can focus on the good stuff in terms of process improvement.
Okay. And so I guess speaking, like, digging a little bit further into that, like, seeing as though you work with operations directors and plant managers across all sorts of UK sites, what's the single biggest mistake you see them make when they decide to start an OPEX program?
I would say the biggest mistake is not involving people at the shop floor level. If you
Yeah.
try and just push this from a top-down approach, or you try and do like a separate team just to do this, it then becomes that additional extra stuff that you do, and that's very quickly dropped if when the pressure comes on. So that's the biggest mistake is not involving people, so they feel shut out. They don't want to participate when they're needed, and the top-down push approach just does not work. It has to be bottom up and top down, and everything in between.
Okay. Interesting. Um, and what about AI, James? AI is kind of everywhere now. It's a big part of what we do every day. It's a big part of, you know, everybody seems to be AI and changing every week. How is it changing operational excellence? Isn't it solving any of those top down, bottom up sort of stuff that you talked about?
So there's a lot of good stuff with AI in terms of data analysis, particularly when you're
Mm,
trying to identify trends in where your losses are. And we talk about losses in operational excellence, and that essentially means anything outside of the ideal. Yeah. So if your process stops, if it takes too long, any additional interventions required, that's a loss. So that's what we tackle. Now, on a big complex production line, there could be thousands of losses. So AI is really good for interrogating that data and giving you an idea of where to go. But there is a cautionary tale for AI use in manufacturing. And it's really people are trying to layer AI, automation, robotics onto their processes as they are. And they're not taking
hmm
the time to really understand if that process is currently fit for purpose. So what they end up doing is building all this good stuff, all this automation AI onto a process which is fundamentally shaky. So it's like building a
Yeah,
house on sand. It all falls down, and then people will say, "Well, that doesn't work. Then we won't do that." So that
right.
integration of people to technology is super important, and that's something I often see go wrong as well.
So are you saying that most people are trying to optimize and automate a broken process without addressing the process first?
Exactly that. Yeah, yeah. If you don't have a solid
Yeah,
foundation, I always think, if you just go in and speed up a machine, yeah, but you don't fix the fundamental root causes, you're just going to make more of the problem quicker. It
yeah.
doesn't solve anything. So it's the same thing with technology. If you layer it on, you, without addressing those root causes, you're just going to make the problem worse.
That makes a lot of sense. And so you touched on losses, and so I was going through your Pulse article. I think it's called Operational Excellence: The System from a few years back. You talk about losses driving 80% of problems. Can you break down what loss intelligence actually means in practice, and like walk me through the kinds of losses that most plants are missing?
So what people typically get wrong when they think about losses is they go, "Well, I know where all my problems are. Yeah, I'm in the plant every day. It's this machine, it's this process, it's that team." Which may or may not be right. But without doing some kind of real solid loss analysis, you don't really know where your problems are. So often people are trying to address, let's take a production line, for example. They're trying to address the packaging issues because that's where they see the problem. But actually, it's the product placement several steps earlier which is causing the issue. So if you don't do good loss analysis, you just focus on the wrong areas. So it's like you start to treat a symptom. Yeah, let's say I woke up this morning
Mhm.
with a headache. So, okay, how do I solve that problem? I'll take some paracetamol, some aspirin. Yeah, but if I don't look at the fundamental root cause of why I had that headache, maybe I didn't drink enough water yesterday, maybe I didn't sleep enough. You know, that's the problem I need to solve. So it's the same thing when you're looking at loss intelligence, really understanding that root cause of where that loss comes from, because otherwise you're just going to constantly address the systems, and this is where the firefighting comes.
Okay, yeah. I really like that approach. And so switching gears a little bit, James, to like some of the marketing stuff, because a lot of the audience are marketing founders or interested in that sorts of things. How are new manufacturing clients actually finding out about you right now? Is it mostly the LDI network, referrals from past plants, speaking events, LinkedIn, or what's your strongest source right now?
As most people find, the strongest source is your network. It's previous
Yeah.
clients, it's people you work with, who maybe were team leaders 10 years ago. They're now operations directors. That's the strongest source of what we do. My concern with that approach is it cuts off a huge amount of the market. It cuts off a huge number of businesses where we could support them, but they don't know we exist because we're not in that network. So outside of that, we do a lot of sharing on LinkedIn is the main one. And what we try to do is share real stories. I mean, we have the kind of glossy brand stuff that to give us a brand identity. But where I
hmm
try to connect with people is to talk about real stories. So I said earlier about, taking bits of product and sticking it over sensors, and someone's been doing that for 18 years. You put that story out, people engage with it. You put a flip chart list of these are the top problems that operational leaders come up with. And it's a real list from a real workshop, and people engage with that. So really what we're trying to do amongst all the articles and all that kind of good stuff that's interesting, it's really trying to engage with people on a personal level and say, I get your pain, I've seen it, and I've helped solve it. So that's where we're working most.
Okay. Yeah, it's that education piece. I feel like I ask that to a lot of people and I get them saying similar things. If we, because we got such a fantastic product or a service, if we could just have more people to see how fantastic it was and educate them slightly on why they need it, and stories are the best way, one of the best ways to do that. So I guess, so if I gave you a magic wand and you could fix one thing about growing lean dimensions in the UK, one constraint that if it just sort of disappeared overnight and it would change everything, what do you think that would be?
Yeah, good question. I think it's getting in front of people who are currently feeling the pain that we can
Mm,
solve. Because I'm very strong advocate for don't try and sell somebody something they don't want. So we're not kind of
yeah,
hounding
yeah.
people or anything like that. But there's enough people who do feel the pain that we can solve. But they're maybe not active on LinkedIn. They're maybe not receptive to email outreach. So really, if I had that
Mm,
magic
mm.
wand, it would be to get in front of them in, I know it could be a webinar, could be an event, could just be a round table somewhere with people who say, yeah, we do have that problem. And we want somebody who can connect with us on a personal level, who understands it and then help us fix that sustainably.
Yeah, that's a great answer. If you look at like the Eugene Schwartz, you know, 5 different stages of awareness, it's more or less talking about the same thing. And if you can put your messaging in front of people who are looking for a solution right then and there, you make boatloads of money, right? There is some fantastic ways that you can do that with AI. So we have like 131 different signals that we look at, and we scrape lots of different sources to find that. And essentially, it gives us these signals to let us know where people are in that awareness cycle.
Hmm.
And so being able to put a message in front of them has been like a crazy game changer. So I would definitely look at, you know, there are some AI tools out there that does stuff like that. Okay. And so finally, last one, James, like if you had a time machine, you could go back to 2020 when everything's kind of set up. What's maybe one thing that you might do differently? And anybody that's listening who runs a plan or maybe wants to talk to OPEX, where can they find you?
So what I would do differently, I think back then we were so caught up with having discussions, getting new clients that we kind of forgot to do our due diligence in terms of creating good case studies, creating testimonials. So we were working so much with old clients,
Yeah.
new clients that it was always on the back burner. So we fell into this trap, which a lot of companies fall into, the feast and famine cycle. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
so really, if I could go back, I would try to anchor all the good stuff we've done in a more easy to share way. So that's something that I would do.
Okay. That's a really good answer. I don't sure I've heard that before, but it makes so much sense. You often get so carried away in the present moment that you forget to document it and you're like, oh, I'll do it later. Or when there's an even bigger win, then I'll come back to it. But then, you know, life gets in the way. And then that's actually one of the very first things that we help people do. So that's a fantastic insight. So yeah, where can people find you if anyone's listening that runs a plan or maybe wants to talk OPEX? Like where can they
And
find
they
you?
can find us on our website, which is askldi.com. Bit of a call to action in the title there. Ask us. They can find me on LinkedIn. I'm quite active there. You might have to search. My name's a bit generic, but you'll find me. Put James Smith Firefighting. Yeah, I'll be there. So so LinkedIn or our website are the two main ways they can find us.
Perfect. I'll make sure to leave everything linked in the description.
Perfect.
But thank you for coming on, James, and sharing some things that like I haven't heard before. So I appreciate that. And thank you guys very much for watching. We'll see you in the next episode.